going to be talking about attachment in this lecture. It is the first life skill that we are reviewing. It is most certainly the most important one, and it's one of my favorite subjects to teach. So first, I want to talk about like what really attachment is, right? And so attachment really loosely defined amongst all different sort of um, professions, right? Mental health, with child development, is really just having that positive bond between a caregiver and a child. And the attachment bond has several key elements. It has, an emotional relationship with that specific person. That relationship brings that child safety, comfort, soothing, and pleasure. And there's this loss or threat of loss of the person. I'm sorry, let me say that again. There is this the loss or threat of loss of that person evokes intense distress, right? So it's that when mommy leaves, you see a child might possibly start to get very stressed. And so that is a sign of an attachment bond. A solid and healthy attachment bond with a primary caregiver, there's tons of research that connects that with there being a higher probability of an adult having healthy relationships, just as where a child who's experienced poor attachment with their mother or another primary caregiver, to have more unhealthy relationships as they get older. And so we're going to watch just a quick video on Bowlby's 4 stages of attachment theory. So I'm going to play that now.
John Bowlby's decades of work into parent-child attachment has led to a huge body of research into bonds and relationships. Now, an attachment can be described as a long-enduring emotional tie to a specific person, and according to Bowlby, such bonds are rooted in evolutionary development. Now, babies have an innate drive to form an attachment with a primary caregiver. It's pretty sharpish, and that's so they can guarantee someone a little bit bigger and a lot bit stronger is there for them to protect them from danger. Now, Bowlby suggests that there are 5 key innate behaviours that babies have in their arsenal straight out of the belly to secure them this satisfactorily whipped primary caregiver. Now, if you watched last time's video, you'll know that these behaviours are sucking, cuddling, looking, smiling, and crying. SCLSC. So how does an attachment develop? Well, Bowlby identifies 4 stages. The first phase, called pre-attachment, covers the first 2 months from birth. In this time, babies already show a portfolio of interaction and attachment-seeking behaviours, even without any personal social experience. They truly are natural people pleasers. In this phase, babies demonstrate a marked preference for a human over a non-human stimuli. For example, a child of this age is much more likely to want to look at a face than at a beach ball. And straight away, they're able to exhibit these signalling behaviours, such as smiling and crying, to attach and maintain attention. Well, in the second stage, attachment in the making, it's the precursor to full-on genuine attachment. From 2 to 7 months, babies acquire the basic social rules of interacting with others, such as turn-taking and shared attention. At this stage of development, the primary caregiver is doing a huge amount of the legwork on behalf of the infant, teaching them the basic rules of play, of turn-taking and demonstrating interaction through things like baby talk conversation and playing with the baby. Bowlby's third stage is what he calls clear-cut attachment, emerging between 7 months and 2 years. Now, this stage loosely lines up with Bowlby's concept of a critical period of attachment, though this idea is somewhat out of fashion at the moment, which we're going to talk about in next time's video. By this stage, infants show undeniable indications of having formed a specific attachment. For example, it's at this point that a baby demonstrates the ability to miss their primary caregiver and doesn't treat all adults indiscriminately. It's no longer squishy baby cuddles for all, it's specific love for a specific person. The final of Bowlby's 4 stages is a goal-corrected partnership. And it's at this stage that the infant's behaviours from 2 years become increasingly intentional. A younger infant would cry because they're in pain, whereas an infant at this stage of development will cry in order to summon their primary caregiver. And this is a hugely sophisticated form of social interaction. Not only are they responding to their own needs and goals, but they're able to manipulate those of others by calculating primary caregivers' own personal goals into their decision-making and behaviour. And it shows that the infant has now developed the basics of a relationship. As these skills develop, a child can move beyond the initial use of external behaviours and draw on increasingly complex understandings of internal feelings and expectations. And it's at this point that Bowlby's concept of internal working models really comes into force. And the basis of all future relationships and interactions are built on these foundational interactions with a person's primary caregiver. Thank you for watching this one. If you've enjoyed it, please subscribe to the channel. Give it a thumbs up to let other people know that it's a good one to watch to revise.
All right, so coming from that, I want you guys to just kind of take a second to really think about some children you have encountered either in your work or in your personal lives, and see how they kind of, match up with Bowlby's, attachment theory, and kind of keeping it in mind as well, moving forward when you're working with children. So moving more in depth. There we go, is safety. So I mentioned on the first slide that safety, and comfort are items that we really, that are items that make up attachment. And I would say safety is the pillar of, of a healthy attachment. It's that the child feels a sense of safety with that caregiver. So, a child behaves the way they feel, right? So if they're feeling unsafe, they may behave in unsafe ways. And so some things you might see in your line of work when a child feels unsafe is you might see a child be more risk-taking, not asking for help when it really is needed. Maybe they're wandering off or running off even. And maybe they're not communicating their needs appropriately. They're aggressive, just some examples there for you. And ways you can promote safety is, providing consistency and routines. You can leave notes for the children when you're absent. That can be a little bit of a distressing time when a child has really bonded and, with you and feels safe and has formed this attachment. And so when you're all of a sudden gone, it might be very scary. So just leaving them a note reassuring that you're going to be returning, and you'll see them then, just helping them to still feel safe even in your absence. Other ways is to model and assist children in repair techniques. So repairing, there's times in an attachment, right? There's broken bonds, right? So you want to be someone in that moment to help model how to repair those breakages, right? And that could be with a child to child, and you're helping model and assist the child to repair that relationship, or it could be, in that repair with you and that child. Other ways you can promote safety is to give help and comfort. When they're distressed and they need assistance, is you can be there for them. And you can also be very mindful of like your tone of voice and volume. So, it's really not, sometimes it's not like the actual message. It is obviously too, but it also can be the way you're saying it, right? There's also the magic word come, right? So instead of being very demanding as the adult, which is kind of easy for us to do sometimes, right? It's like second nature to just be like, go do this, go do that. Come on, let's go do here, or, sit down here or stand up here. Go put this away, right? So instead of saying those things, the magic word comes into play of come is where, let's say, the example could be to, you know, go wash your hands, right? It could be come, let's wash hands. And so it's providing help, comfort, and making it kind of known to them, like, come, like we're going to be doing this together. So there's plenty of signs of a child not have formed a healthy attachment with a significant adult in their life as of yet, before coming to you. And so some things you might see, there's different attachment styles, and that is something that also is another article that will be available on Blackboard for you for reading. But for Ainsworth's study, on secure attachment, anxious attachment, avoidant attachments, right? And there's signs of those. And so, if there's a child who is highly independent, right? And when I mean highly independent, it means like there's no seeking out support from another adult, and there's a lack of attempting to connect, right, to an adult, or there's even a lack of responding to adult requests. And this is normal behavior if you're new to working to a child, right? And the child has to develop that sense of safety and trust with you. But before, but once you have developed, or you've been working on for quite some time, you continue to see signs that the child is just not connecting, just not responding to your requests, and continues to be highly independent. It is a sign of an avoidant attachment. The other example is more of an anxious attachment style, which is where a child might just trust all adults they come into contact with, and children, and they can they're easily connecting with others, and they become even like overly connected with others, right? And so sometimes you might be like, oh my gosh, how cute, this child already wants to hug me and wants to go everywhere with me and hold my hand. And it could also be a sign that they have not yet formed a healthy attachment, because they're really seeking that desire, right? And they might have a caregiver who comes and goes, and so they're nervous. They're nervous that you're going to be coming and going, or they have to like overly perform for your affection. And so those are some signs of of an anxious attachment style, or more of an avoidant attachment style. And we're going to go a little bit into also kind of like what we can do, right, as educators, as in other roles of our lives as well, of how to work with children who have had these things, and in these attachment styles. So we're going to go into that later in this lecture. So while we talk about these things and signs of this, signs of that, we always want to be mindful of cultural differences, because we can sit there and be like, oh, that is a sign of an avoidant attachment, right? But it's really, it could be that there's something else going on here, right? And we really we don't want to place judgment. So we might assume from our education or from our growing up and our background that it's something different from us. And so it might be feeling wrong. And it could very much so that there are, signs of an unhealthy attachment at play, or it's just a cultural difference, and ways for us to really find out if it's just a cultural difference, right, is to really know your families you're working with. Talk with them and ask them questions. And, you could even say, oh, I kind of noticed this in class. I was wondering what you might think of it. And they might be like, oh, in our family, da 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 da. And it might make a lot more sense, right? And so it's wonderful to have that communication with the caregivers, and allowing there to be differences, right, between each child. Like each child is unique, and each child does come from a different culture, and knowing that they don't, they don't have all of the same cultural experiences as you, right? And so it is important to allow there to be those differences. That's what makes us all so unique from each other, and we can all grow from knowing each other, right, and working with each other. And then we also want there to teach children that there can be some differences between the home culture, right, and then the school culture. So if it's acceptable, if it makes more sense, right. So just some, examples of what might be a cultural difference, right? Um, you know, let's say you're working with a child and something's just kind of rubbing you the wrong way. Check in with yourself, reflect in with you. Ooh, what's happening here? Why am I feeling, this way when a child does this, right? And checking in if it's your own cultural stuff that's coming up, right? Your own personal experiences. So one good example is a lack of eye contact, right? And so you might come from a culture where that is considered rude, right? To not be given eye contact when you're speaking to someone. It's showing, or maybe not rude, but it shows maybe they're not listening. Whereas maybe the child comes from a culture where they've been taught that if they are staring directly into, an elder's eyes, that's considered disrespectful, and that they shouldn't be doing that, right? And so that's one good example. Frequent requests for assistance could be a cultural difference to be mindful of. Some children are taught to really question, like, all requests that they're being given. So it might rub you the wrong way, where you're like, why is this child always asking me? They should just obey, right? Because you might come from a culture where it's just expected that you obey when you are told to do something from a superior. And then another thing is, just the last point to make is when you are surprised by a child's behavior, avoid assuming something's wrong with the child, or avoid assuming really anything, right? Placing any judgment. So again, have open communication with these families, and also really get to know your the children you work with, right? Okay, so this one, there's a lot on this one. So how do we promote healthy attachments as the teacher, right? So this goes for many different roles when you're working with children. And so the first one, you really want to just get to know the child and family very well. And that can take time, and that's okay, right? You want to go at the child's pace and not push them. And you really want to build that trust and safety, and connect with them on their level and what they like to do. And so you could learn about the child even by kind of asking, the caregivers, right? What are the child's strengths? What are their weaknesses? You can ask the kid, what do you like to do? What are your favorite toys? What's your favorite thing to watch, right? And another thing is you can show interest in the child verbally, right? You can be asking them those questions, and just showing a lot of interest in their world. You also can do it through nonverbal communication. So some examples I gave is you can just turn towards them, right? You could get on their level. It's always very important to, get on a child's level to help them feel safe, and also that there's no superiority, right? And you can respond to what they're showing or telling you with interest. And our text, calls this sports casting. And so in the therapy world, we call it like reflecting. And so sometimes kids aren't verbally communicating with us to really connect with. And one way for them, we can connect with them and show them, hey, we're interested in your world, is by you know responding to what they're doing. And so it could even just be like, oh wow, like, you picked up that toy. Oh, and you're going to place it in there. Oh, I wonder what you're going to do next. And it might break them a little bit, right? It might soften them a little bit. And they'll feel, more supported from you, more cared for. Another item is being affectionate and nurturing. And so you can be affectionate and nurturing in so many different ways, right? It could be that you're checking in with them and showing them affection even when there's a behavioral issue. So let's say a child, went up, grabbed a toy, and hit another child, right? You could still check in with them and show them affection, even if they did something wrong, right? We don't want to withhold our affection and nurturance and our care, right? When there is a issue. So even that goes for, a parent. We don't want to withhold our love. Affection is not conditional. And we want them to know this is an unconditional, I care about you. Hey, what's going on? I noticed you just hit, Timothy. What's going on? I'm concerned. You must have been so mad to do that. And check in with them and talk with them and show them you still care. And you're concerned that, there's something going on, right? And with that, you can still set those limits, those rules, and those boundaries, even when there is something going on, right? So we can be affectionate when there isn't anything going on, and we can certainly still be affectionate when there's something's going on. I would say this one is an important one to do, even for children who you might be struggling with yourself, right? I think it's unrealistic to say we're all going to just naturally bond to all these children. You're going to, there's children that are going to just be, you're going to have such an easy time bonding with and just connecting with. And there's going to be other children where you also struggle with, and really allowing yourself grace in that. And that's okay, right? Just like we don't expect us to get along with every adult, we can't expect us to instantly care for other children. And so kids will pick up on that, and they'll sense it, and they'll feel it, and they'll respond to it, right? If we're struggling with them, if we're feeling frustrated or disconnected, they will respond to it. And so it's important for us to check in with that, how we're feeling. Be okay, let it be what it is, but also work on it, and check in with yourself of, why is that happening? Is it my own stuff coming up? Does this child do something that reminds me of, something that I do that, or I used to do, I don't like, or I used to get in trouble for myself, right? And, things like that, and checking on how you can work on that with them, and build that positive, healthy attachment with those children as well that you are struggling with, that isn't as easy. So something you might want to do with those kids is spend specific, unique, one-on-one time with them. And just kind of give yourself a breather a little bit, right? And just engage and play with them in in their world too, right? And stuff that they want to do. Another way to promote healthy attachment as the teacher is identifying their internal qualities. So not just, oh my gosh, Susie, I love your bow. It's also like, wow, Susie, you showed such care for your friend when she spilled all her milk and you helped her clean it up. That was really sweet. So you want to identify to the child their internal qualities, right? What they're made of, not just those cool new shoes they came to school with that light up, which, hey, that's fine too, right? But we also want to identify, the strong core values that the children are displaying, right, as well. And And lastly, we also want to give the children help and the comfort and repair breaks in relationships, like I have mentioned. And so, one thing on help is it might be a child's task to do something. So maybe one child is refusing to put away the toys, right? It could just be, come on, like, you putting your hand out, come on, let's go do this together. Or it could, you're modeling, right? You're modeling teamwork, connecting, and helping as a team, right? And so there's different ways we can provide children help while still ensuring they're following the rules that you've set or the boundaries, and still building the healthy attachments, okay? And giving the children help and comfort could still also be kind of, hey, I'm concerned, right? What's going on for you? You seem upset today. Things like that. And so our last slide for this lecture is on play. And so a quote for you that is just, I think, so powerful is 5 minutes of one-on-one playtime with a child on a regular basis improves a child's behavior in a week more than most other interventions can do in a year. So we all have our agenda, right? We all have so much to teach and so much to provide these kids, which is wonderful. Even for behavioral interventionists, right, who work with kids, they have so many tools in their basket to give these kids. And sometimes it takes 5 minutes of just one-on-one time with a child. And when I say just that 5 minutes, it means no other distractions. You're there with that child. That kid is in charge, right? They're taking the lead. They're telling you what we're doing, and you're joining in with them. Oh, cool. So what do I get to be? We're playing superheroes, and you're like, cool. Like, what superhero do I get to be? Ooh, do I get to fly? Or and if they give you the opportunity to choose, you could do that as well, right? But you want to let them lead the play. Also, you want to use like their language, right? So you want to use the child's language. You want to really spark that inner child in you and avoid the teacher and adult learning scripts, right? So like it's just such a easy desire once you're in those few minutes with a child to just start like, oh, like we're gonna play with the blocks, like what shape is that, or like how many square blocks do you see here, right? That's going back into different roles. That's not the 5 minutes of one-on time engaging time with them. You are you're still you're not connecting with the child in you. You still have your agenda to push, really, in that. There's also a lot of games actually that are either listed in your text or posted to Blackboard, and they are either the numbers 46 to 47 for baby games or 48 to 49 for nurturing activities. And so these are some cool examples of things you can do now to help build attachments. And they can even be with like kids who are a little bit older, but you just break it back down to just some simple, warm attachment games, or games that promote attachment, right? They can be really good like icebreakers. So it could even be just like this a tickle bug type of game. And these kind of games can be repetitive, and so can the nurturing ones, right? So those can be repeated, sorry, and they can be structured and predictable activities. And you can continue to do these things, not just like one time, right? Because we want to allow the child to like learn and practice, right? These skills and attachment and nurturing skills. And so doing them more than once is, completely okay, right? And sometimes just to connect with the child, even if they're 4, utilizing like a baby game might help them just kind of break down the wall a little bit, right? And start to connect with you once you're all of a sudden doing a, peekaboo or tickle bug game, right? And so these activities are really great to try. I highly recommend using some of them. Um, One of them I think is really cool is just like for the nurturing activity is the lotion table. So you can, fill a basket with little like travel size plastic bottle containers. Um, and then invite the child to sit across from you and have them rub lotions into their hands. And then open each bottle in turn and hope, they can hold it up to, holding it up for the child to smell. And then the child can choose which one they want. And then they can, pour a small amount into your own hand and rub it gently into the child's hand. And it can just, you can sing a song or talk just quietly, or you can even talk about kind of like the senses that are evoking within that, right? So it can just be nurturing, kind, sweet activities, right, to bond in. And so this ends our lecture on attachments, and that's it for this one. Thanks, guys.